You wake up every morning carrying the same quiet exhaustion, the weight of unanswered prayers, the frustration of knocking on heaven's door only to hear silence echoing back. You have spent years, perhaps decades, searching for God in churches, in books, in desperate moments when life pressed you to your knees. Yet deep down, in the parts of yourself you rarely examine, you know something fundamental is missing from this equation. What if I told you that your very act of seeking has been the barrier keeping you from what you desire most? What if the divine you have been frantically pursuing has been waiting patiently within you, not as a distant father figure to appease, but as a living force ready to move through your thoughts, your decisions, your daily existence? Most people live their entire lives as spiritual beggars, hands outstretched, hoping for crumbs of divine favor. But today, you discover something that will forever change how you relate to the infinite power that created you. You are not here to seek God. You are here to become the very embodiment of divine intelligence in human form. This is not about positive thinking or wishful meditation. This is about a complete transformation of your identity from seeker to manifester, from hopeful to certain, from separated to unified. When you grasp this truth, not just intellectually, but in the deepest chambers of your being, you will never again beg the universe for what you want. Instead, you will walk through life as though every prayer has already been answered, every dream already approved, every step already blessed. The signs will not come as burning bushes or voices from clouds. They will come as unshakable inner peace when chaos surrounds you, as perfect synchronicities that guide your path, as a calm courage that never wavers. No matter what storms may rage, you will think different thoughts because your thoughts will become divine creations. You will act with different intentions because your actions will become reflections of sacred presence. Fear will lose its grip on you because you will finally understand that fear is nothing more than misdirected faith, an unconscious prayer for what you dread most. When fear dissolves, when ego steps aside, when doubt becomes impossible, you create the internal space for God to move through you as naturally as breath moves through your lungs. This is your invitation to stop searching outward and begin manifesting inward. This is how you transform from someone who hopes for miracles to someone who lives as the miracle itself. If you are ready for this level of truth, if you are prepared to embody rather than merely seek, then subscribe now and let us walk this path together. The divine within you is ready to awaken. Number 1, God is not lost, you are distracted. You sit in silence for 30 seconds and your mind becomes a circus. Thoughts crash into each other like bumper cars driven by children who have never learned to steer. You close your eyes to pray and instead find yourself mentally rehearsing tomorrow's presentation, replaying yesterday's argument, calculating this month's bills. You wonder why God feels so distant, why the divine seems to hide behind walls of cosmic silence. But what if I told you that God has never moved an inch away from you? What if the distance you feel is nothing more than the noise you have allowed to colonize the sacred space of your awareness? The truth that will revolutionize your spiritual life is this: God is not lost. You are distracted. Divinity does not play hide and seek with struggling souls. The infinite intelligence that created galaxies and orchestrates the dance of atoms has never stepped away from its throne within you. But you have buried that throne under layers of mental debris, digital overwhelm, and the relentless chatter of a culture that profits from your disconnection. Picture your mind as a pristine mountain lake. In its natural state, the surface reflects the sky with perfect clarity. You can see straight through to the depths where treasures lie waiting. But throw a handful of pebbles into that lake and watch what happens. The surface ripples and churns. The reflection fractures into 1,000 distorted pieces. The treasures below become invisible, not because they have vanished, but because the clarity has been disturbed. I once knew a man who spent 20 years searching for God in every church, temple, and spiritual gathering he could find. He traveled to holy sites, collected blessed artifacts, and filled his library with sacred texts. Yet peace eluded him. One evening, exhausted and defeated, he sat in his garden as darkness fell. For the first time in decades, he simply sat without agenda, without searching, without trying to find anything at all. In that moment of pure stillness, he felt a presence so profound and intimate that he wept. God had been there all along, waiting beneath the frantic noise of his seeking. This is the turning point that changes everything. The moment you realize that your spiritual problem is not a matter of distance but of static. The divine signal broadcasts constantly, but you have been tuning into every frequency except the one that matters. You have mistaken the volume of your mental noise for the depth of your spiritual experience. You have confused the intensity of your searching with the quality of your connection. Here is what you must do, and you must do it today. Choose 1 hour, just 1 hour, and declare it sacred. Turn off every device that pings, buzzes, or glows. Sit somewhere that feeds your soul, even if it is just a corner of your bedroom. Do not try to find God. Do not try to feel anything spiritual. Simply sit and breathe, and notice what happens when you stop adding to the noise. Notice what emerges when you stop disturbing the lake. The voice you have been straining to hear has been speaking all along. The presence you have been desperately seeking has been watching you search from the very place you forgot to look, the stillness within your own being. God is not hiding in some distant heaven, waiting for you to prove your worthiness. God is resting in the silence you have been too afraid to enter, speaking in the quiet you have been too busy to hear. Stop looking for God and start being still enough to realize that God has never stopped looking at you. Number 2. God doesn't reveal himself to those who beg, but to those who transform. You have been on your knees so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to stand. Every prayer has become a plea. Every meditation, a desperate negotiation with a God you imagine sits high above, weighing your worthiness on scales you cannot see. You beg for signs, for miracles, for some confirmation that your spiritual cries are being heard. Yet the more you plead, the more distant the divine seems to become. You have fallen into the most seductive trap of the spiritual journey, believing that humility means making yourself small, that faith requires you to grovel. But what if everything you have been taught about approaching God is backwards? What if the very act of begging creates the separation you are trying to bridge? What if God does not reveal himself to those who beg, but to those who transform themselves into vessels worthy of divine expression? The fundamental error that keeps millions of souls in spiritual poverty is this: they approach God as beggars when they should approach as inheritors. They pray from a position of lack when they should live from a position of abundance. They wait for God to act when they should act as God would act. Begging reinforces the illusion that you are separate from the source of all power. Transformation dissolves that illusion entirely. Think of electricity flowing through a wire. The electricity does not beg the wire to conduct it. The wire simply becomes what electricity needs: a clear, unobstructed channel. When the wire is pure copper, electricity flows freely. When the wire is corroded or broken, the current cannot pass through. God operates the same way. Divine energy does not respond to desperation. It responds to preparation. It flows through those who have transformed their consciousness into a clear channel. There was a woman I knew who prayed every day for 10 years, asking God to provide for her struggling family. Her prayers were sincere, her faith genuine, but her circumstances never changed. Then one day, something shifted. Instead of asking God to provide, she began asking what kind of person she would need to become to be worthy of God's provision. She stopped praying for money and started praying for wisdom. She stopped begging for opportunities and started preparing herself to recognize them. Within 6 months, her entire life had transformed, not because God finally heard her prayers, but because she finally became someone who could receive what God had been offering all along. This is the moment when everything changes, when you realize that God has never been withholding anything from you. You have been withholding yourself from God. Every time you approach the divine from a position of weakness, you reinforce the very weakness that blocks the flow. Every time you beg, you declare yourself unworthy. Every time you plead, you push away what you claim to seek. Transform your approach, and you transform your results. Instead of praying for God to change your circumstances, live in a way that demonstrates you already trust His perfect timing. Instead of asking for signs, become so aligned that you naturally recognize the guidance that surrounds you. Instead of begging for blessings, start blessing others with such generosity that you become a magnet for abundance. The God you seek does not respond to the volume of your desperation. He responds to the frequency of your faith. He does not reveal himself to those who make themselves small. He reveals himself to those who expand their consciousness to match his magnitude. He does not answer beggars. He answers those who have transformed themselves into living prayers. Stop waiting for God to change his mind about you. Start changing your mind about yourself. Stop asking God to move in your life. Start moving through life as if God already dwells within you. The moment you shift from begging to embodying, from pleading to being, you discover that God was never reluctant to reveal himself. You were simply not yet ready to receive the revelation. Become worthy, and worthiness will become your reality. Transform yourself, and transformation will become your gift to the world. Number 3, your mind is the temple. Choose who rules it. You walk through your days carrying a sacred space between your ears, yet you treat it like a public restroom. Every random thought is welcome. Every fear gets a front row seat. Every doubt receives a microphone. Every worry is invited to take up permanent residence. You wonder why peace feels so elusive, why clarity seems so rare, why the divine feels so distant. But what if I told you that the very space where God longs to dwell has been rented out to squatters who have no business being there? Your mind is the temple, not the building down the street with stained glass windows and wooden pews, not the distant heaven you imagine exists somewhere beyond the clouds. The sacred space where infinite intelligence meets human consciousness exists in the realm of your thoughts. And right now, at this very moment, you get to choose who rules that temple. The greatest spiritual revolution begins with a simple recognition. Every thought that enters your mind is either building an altar to the divine or constructing a monument to fear. There is no neutral ground in consciousness. Every mental visitor either elevates your frequency or drags it down. Every idea you entertain either connects you to the source of all power or disconnects you from your true nature. Imagine walking into the most magnificent cathedral you have ever seen. The architecture takes your breath away. Light streams through stained glass, painting rainbows on marble floors. The ceiling soars toward heaven itself. Now imagine that this cathedral has been invaded by a gang of vandals. They have covered the walls with graffiti. They have smashed the windows. They have turned the altar into a garbage dump. They throw parties all night and leave trash scattered across the sacred space. How long would you tolerate this desecration? How quickly would you call for security to restore order? Yet this is exactly what you allow to happen in the temple of your mind every single day. Fear scrawls its predictions across the walls of your consciousness. Doubt smashes the windows of your vision. Worry turns the altar of your awareness into a dumping ground for anxious thoughts. And you not only tolerate this desecration, you often participate in it. I knew a man who built a successful business, raised a loving family, and achieved every goal he had set for himself. Yet he was miserable. His mind had become a war zone where negative thoughts battled positive ones in endless cycles. One day, he made a decision that changed everything. He began treating his mind like the sacred space it truly was. He appointed himself as the security guard of his own consciousness. Every thought had to pass inspection before being granted entry. Fear was turned away at the door. Doubt was escorted out immediately. Worry was banned from the premises. This is the turning point that separates those who live in spiritual poverty from those who dwell in divine abundance. The moment you realize that you are not the victim of your thoughts, you are the gatekeeper. You are not at the mercy of whatever mental visitors show up uninvited. You have the authority to grant or deny access to the most sacred space in your universe. Here's how you reclaim your temple. Begin each morning by consciously choosing the first thoughts you will allow into your awareness. Before you check your phone, before you review your problems, before you rehearse your worries, consciously invite thoughts of gratitude, possibility, and divine presence into your mind. Throughout the day, practice thought hygiene with the same diligence you practice physical hygiene. When fear knocks, recognize it, but do not open the door. When doubt tries to enter, acknowledge its presence, but refuse an admission. The mind aligned with divine purpose becomes a conductor of miracles. The mind dominated by fear becomes a transmitter of limitation. The mind focused on possibility becomes a magnet for breakthrough. The mind obsessed with problems becomes a factory for more problems. You are the architect of your inner cathedral. You are the priest of your mental sanctuary. You are the guardian of the sacred space where God longs to dwell. Every thought you choose is either an act of worship or an act of rebellion. Every mental visitor you welcome either invites the divine in or keeps the divine out. Your mind is the temple. The question is not whether God wants to dwell there. The question is whether you will create a space worthy of His presence. Number 4, replace the search with daily embodiment. You have spent years searching for God in weekend retreats, spiritual books, and moments of crisis when desperation drove you to your knees. You treat divine connection like a rare vintage wine, something to be saved for special occasions and sacred spaces. Meanwhile, Monday morning arrives, and you step back into a life that looks nothing like the spiritual insights you claim to have received. You compartmentalize the sacred, relegating God to Sunday services and emergency prayers, then wonder why transformation feels so elusive. The revolutionary truth that will reshape your entire spiritual experience is this: God is not made real in your seeking. God is made real in your living. Divine presence does not emerge from your searching. Divine presence emerges from your embodying. Every ordinary moment is an opportunity to practice the presence of the infinite. Every mundane decision is a chance to choose as divinity would choose. You have been approaching spirituality like a tourist visiting a foreign country. You show up occasionally, take some pictures, collect a few souvenirs, then return to your normal life with stories to tell. But embodiment is not tourism. Embodiment is immigration. It is the decision to permanently relocate your consciousness from the land of separation to the territory of divine union. Think of a river that has carved its path through stone over thousands of years. The river did not create that magnificent canyon in a single flood. It shaped the landscape through the steady, persistent flow of water, day after day, year after year. Your spiritual transformation happens the same way. Not through dramatic spiritual experiences that fade with time, but through the steady flow of conscious choices that gradually reshape the landscape of your life. There was a baker I once knew who transformed his simple profession into a sacred practice. Every morning at 4 o'clock, as he kneaded dough in the darkness before dawn, he would silently offer each loaf as a prayer for the nourishment of souls. As he shaped the bread, he shaped his intentions. As he waited for the dough to rise, he cultivated patience. As he fed his community, he fed his own spirit. He never went to seminary, never studied theology, never claimed to be a spiritual teacher. Yet he embodied divine love more fully than many who spend their lives studying sacred texts. This is the moment when seeking ends and being begins. When you realize that every breath is an opportunity to inhale divine presence, every word is a chance to speak with sacred intention, every action is a possibility to move with conscious purpose. God does not dwell in the extraordinary moments you plan. God dwells in the ordinary moments you consecrate. Here is how you transform your daily life into a living prayer. Begin with your words. Before you speak, pause and ask yourself, are these words worthy of divine expression? When you answer your phone, let your voice carry the peace you claim to seek. When you respond to email, let your words reflect the love you say you believe in. When you interact with difficult people, let your patience demonstrate the faith you profess to have. Transform your work into worship. Whether you build houses or balance books, teach children or manage accounts, approach each task as if you are serving not just customers or employers, but the divine itself. Quality becomes devotion. Excellence becomes offering. Service becomes sacrament. Transform your choices into prayers. When you choose what to eat, eat as if your body is a temple. When you choose what to watch, view content that elevates rather than degrades your consciousness. When you choose how to spend your time, invest it as if each moment is a gift from the infinite. The God you have been searching for in distant places is waiting to be discovered in immediate choices. The divine presence you seek in extraordinary moments is ready to be revealed in ordinary decisions. The spiritual transformation you chase in weekend workshops is available in the way you treat the cashier at the grocery store, the patience you show in traffic, the kindness you extend to your family when no one is watching. Stop searching for God and start embodying God. Stop seeking the divine and start being the divine. Every decision you make is either a sacred altar, where you honor the highest within you, or a missed opportunity to remember who you truly are. What if every choice you made today was a love letter to the universe? What if every action was your way of saying yes to the divine invitation to live as a conscious expression of infinite intelligence? This is not philosophy. This is practice. This is how you stop seeking and start being. Number 5. Fear is reverse prayer, and you practice it daily. You spend 5 minutes each morning asking God for what you want, then 23 hours and 55 minutes mentally rehearsing what you dread. You pray for abundance while constantly calculating scarcity. You ask for health while obsessing over symptoms. You seek peace while feeding the very thoughts that generate anxiety. You wonder why your positive affirmations seem powerless against the tide of worry that crashes through your mind each day. But what if I told you that fear is not the opposite of faith? What if fear is faith aimed in the wrong direction? Every time you vividly imagine disaster, you are praying. Every time you rehearse failure, you are sending energy toward an outcome. Every time you worry about what might go wrong, you are focusing the creative power of your consciousness on precisely what you claim you do not want. Fear is not the absence of spiritual power. Fear is spiritual power being used unconsciously, directed toward the very experiences you hope to avoid. The most shocking revelation of my spiritual journey was discovering how much more energy I was investing in my fears than in my faith. I was a part-time believer and a full-time worrier. I would spend moments asking for what I wanted and hours imagining what I dreaded. I treated positive thinking like a weekend hobby and negative thinking like a full-time profession. Imagine that your mind is a powerful radio transmitter, broadcasting signals into the universe 24 hours a day. The universe receives every transmission with perfect accuracy, but it does not judge the content of your signal. It simply responds to the frequency you emit most consistently. When you broadcast fear, the universe receives your request for fearful experiences. When you transmit worry, the universe interprets this as an order for worrisome circumstances. When you emanate anxiety, the universe delivers situations that match your anxious vibration. I once counseled a businessman who could not understand why every venture he attempted seemed to fail just as success appeared within reach. He was intelligent, hardworking, and well-intentioned, yet pattern after pattern, his projects would collapse at the crucial moment. As we explored his mental habits, the answer became clear. While he consciously desired success, he unconsciously expected failure. He spent his days mentally preparing for disaster, rehearsing worst-case scenarios, and protecting himself against imagined catastrophes. His fear was so strong and so constant that it overwhelmed his conscious desires. He was praying backwards without realizing it. This is the turning point that transforms victims into victors. The moment you realize that your emotional states are not random weather patterns beyond your control. They are powerful prayers being offered continuously to the creative force of the universe. Your worry is a prayer for problems, your anxiety is a prayer for chaos, your fear is a prayer for limitation. But your peace is a prayer for harmony. Your confidence is a prayer for success. Your love is a prayer for connection. You must become as intentional with your emotional energy as you are with your financial investments. You must guard your mental space as carefully as you guard your physical home. You must choose your thoughts as deliberately as you choose your words. Every moment of fear you indulge is a moment of faith you have withdrawn from your dreams. Here is how you redirect the prayer of your life. When fear arises, do not fight it or deny it. Acknowledge it as misdirected creative energy. Then consciously redirect that energy toward what you actually want to experience. When you catch yourself imagining failure, immediately shift to imagining success with the same emotional intensity. When you notice yourself rehearsing problems, redirect that mental energy toward rehearsing solutions. Practice emotional discipline with the same commitment you practice physical hygiene. Just as you would not go days without washing your body, do not go hours without cleansing your mental and emotional space. Replace the habit of worry with the practice of visualization. Replace the pattern of anxiety with the discipline of gratitude. Replace the prayer of fear with the prayer of faith. The creative power that you have been using against yourself can be redirected to work for yourself. The mental energy that has been generating problems can be transformed into the force that creates solutions. The emotional intensity that has been manifesting your fears can become the power that materializes your dreams. You are always praying, you are always broadcasting, you are always creating. The only question is whether you are praying consciously or unconsciously, whether you are broadcasting deliberately or accidentally, whether you are creating intentionally or by default. Stop praying for what you fear. Start praying for what you desire. Your life will become the answer to whichever prayer you practice most consistently. Number 6, signs of embodiment, how you know God is acting in you. You keep asking for a sign from above while missing the miracles happening within. You scan the sky for divine messages while ignoring the profound shifts occurring in your own consciousness. You wait for burning bushes and parted seas while overlooking the quiet transformation of your inner landscape. You expect God to announce His presence with thunder when He prefers to whisper through the increasing peace that has begun to replace your anxiety, the growing courage that has started to dissolve your fears. The signs of divine embodiment are not the spectacular displays you see in movies or read about in ancient texts. They are intimate, personal, and often so subtle that only you can recognize them. God does not usually reveal His activity through external drama. He reveals it through the internal harmony that emerges when your human consciousness aligns with divine intelligence. You have been conditioned to expect spiritual experiences that look like special effects, but authentic divine connection manifests as a profound shift in how you respond to the ordinary challenges of daily life. It shows up as an unexplainable calm in the center of chaos, an unshakable knowing in the midst of uncertainty, a gentle confidence that flows from a source deeper than your personality. The first sign is peace without reason. You find yourself calm in situations that would have previously triggered anxiety. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because your relationship to circumstances has transformed. You stop needing external conditions to cooperate before you can access inner stability. Peace becomes your natural state, rather than a rare visitor that appears only when life goes according to your plans. The second sign is bold courage in the face of uncertainty. You begin making decisions that align with your highest vision even when you cannot see the entire path ahead. You speak truth even when it is inconvenient. You choose integrity even when it costs you something. This courage does not come from adrenaline or desperation. It flows from a quiet confidence that you are supported by a force greater than your fears. The third sign is the appearance of meaningful synchronicities. Doors open just as you approach them. The right people appear at the precise moment you need them. Resources become available exactly when you require them. These are not coincidences. They are evidence that you have aligned your consciousness with the natural flow of universal intelligence. When you embody divine presence, you become a magnet for divine coordination. The fourth sign is sudden clarity in areas where confusion once reigned. Problems that seemed impossible to solve suddenly reveal obvious solutions. Relationships that felt hopelessly complicated begin to make sense. Decisions that paralyzed you with indecision become surprisingly clear. This clarity does not come from analyzing more information. It emerges from accessing a level of intelligence that exists beyond the limitations of your rational mind. I once worked with a woman who had been stuck in a toxic job for years, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty about her next step. She prayed for guidance but received no dramatic revelations. Then gradually, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. She began arriving at work feeling strangely peaceful despite the hostile environment. She found herself speaking up in meetings where she had previously remained silent. Opportunities began presenting themselves through casual conversations and unexpected phone calls. One morning, she simply knew it was time to give her notice. Not because she had figured out every detail of her future, but because she felt supported by an intelligence that knew the path even when she could not see it. This is the turning point where seeking transforms into knowing. When you realize that the signs you have been asking for are not dramatic external events, but subtle internal shifts. God does not usually speak through miraculous interventions. God speaks through the increasing alignment between your thoughts and divine wisdom, your emotions and divine love, your actions and divine purpose. Here is how you learn to recognize divine activity in your life. Pay attention to your responses rather than your circumstances. Notice when you remain calm in situations that would have previously disturbed your peace. Observe when you feel guided to take action that serves not just your ego, but the highest good of all involved. Watch for moments when solutions emerge from a place deeper than your analytical mind. The signs are there. They have always been there. You simply stopped looking for them in the wrong places. God is not hiding His activity from you. God is revealing His presence through the gradual transformation of your consciousness, the slow replacement of fear with faith, the steady emergence of love where hatred once lived. Stop looking up for signs and start looking within for shifts. The miracle you seek is not coming from the sky. The miracle you seek is happening in the sanctuary of your own being. Number 7, live as if God already said yes. You move through life like a child standing outside a candy store, nose pressed against the glass, waiting for permission to enter. Every dream feels contingent on divine approval. Every goal seems to require cosmic endorsement. Every step forward is taken tentatively, as if you are trespassing on territory that does not belong to you. You pray for green lights while living as if the universe has installed nothing but stop signs in your path. But what if I told you that the permission you seek has already been granted? What if the approval you crave was given the moment you were born? The most paralyzing lie you have ever believed is that you need to earn God's blessing before you can live boldly. This belief transforms prayer into begging, faith into hesitation, and divine relationship into an eternal audition where you perform for a judge who has already declared you worthy. You wait for signs of approval while the greatest sign has already been given, your existence itself. You have been living as if you are on probation with the universe, as if every move must be pre-approved by a cosmic review board. You hold back your full potential because you fear divine disapproval. You dim your light because you mistake humility for self-diminishment. You play small because you have confused modesty with spiritual correctness. But consider this revolutionary possibility. What if the infinite intelligence that created you did not make a mistake? What if the divine spark within you is not a loan that can be revoked, but a permanent gift that can never be withdrawn? What if God's yes to your life was spoken before you took your first breath and will echo long after you take your last? Imagine that you have spent your entire life believing you need a visa to visit a country where you already hold citizenship. You stand in long lines, fill out endless applications, and submit to interviews for permission to enter a land that already belongs to you by birthright. This is exactly how you have been approaching your own divinity, your own dreams, your own magnificent potential. There was an artist I once knew who possessed extraordinary talent but created nothing of significance for 20 years. She would start paintings but never finish them, convinced that she needed divine inspiration to proceed. She prayed for artistic vision while her easel gathered dust. One day she realized that her gift itself was the sign she had been seeking. She stopped waiting for permission to create and started creating as if she had already received every blessing she needed. Her art transformed from hesitant sketches to masterpieces that moved hearts and changed lives. The talent had always been there. The permission had always been granted. She simply started living as if God had already said yes to her artistic expression. This is the moment when waiting ends and living begins. When you realize that you have been seeking permission for a life you have already been authorized to live. You have been asking for approval to use gifts you have already been given. You have been requesting permission to access power that already flows through your veins. The shift in consciousness that changes everything is this. Instead of living like you are trying to convince God to bless you, start living as if God has already blessed you beyond measure. Instead of moving through life like you are auditioning for divine favor, start walking as if you have already been cast in the leading role of your own magnificent story. Here is how you make this transformation practical. When you wake up tomorrow morning, let your first thought be gratitude for another day of already approved living. When you face a decision, ask not whether God will approve, but how someone who knows they are already approved would choose. When you encounter an opportunity, approach it not as a supplicant seeking permission, but as a beloved child claiming their inheritance. Dream your biggest dreams as if they have already received cosmic endorsement. Pursue your most audacious goals as if the universe is conspiring in your favor. Love as if you have been commanded to love. Create as if you have been appointed to create. Serve as if you have been commissioned to serve. Live as if you have been authorized to live fully, boldly, magnificently. The energy field around you shifts when you stop living like you are waiting for permission and start living like you have already been blessed. People respond to your confidence differently. Opportunities appear more frequently. Resources become available more readily. This is not magic. This is the natural result of aligning your consciousness with the truth that God said yes to your life before you knew how to say yes to yourself. You are not auditioning for a role you might someday be given. You are already cast as the star of your own divine drama. You are not waiting for permission to live fully. You have already been authorized to live magnificently. The only question remaining is whether you will accept the role you have already been offered. God already said yes. Now it is time for you to say yes to God by saying yes to the fullness of your own divine potential. Right now, in this very moment, something profound is shifting within you. You can feel it in the spaces between your thoughts, in the quiet pause between your heartbeats. The seeking has begun to dissolve. The desperate reaching outward is giving way to a gentle turning inward. You are no longer the same person who began this journey. You are becoming the vessel you were always meant to be. The transformation happening within you is not temporary. It is not a fleeting inspiration that will fade with tomorrow's challenges. It is the awakening of your true nature, the remembering of what you have always been beneath the layers of doubt and separation. Every breath you take from this moment forward carries the potential for divine expression. Every choice you make becomes an opportunity to embody the infinite intelligence that flows through you. You are standing at the threshold of a new way of being, not seeking God, but being God in human form, not waiting for miracles, but becoming the miracle that others witness, not pleading for blessings, but blessing the world with your very presence. This is not philosophy. This is your new reality. Imagine a seed that has spent its entire existence believing it was separate from the tree it was destined to become. One day it stops searching for the tree and simply begins to grow. It does not need to find its destiny. It needs only to unfold what is already encoded within its essence. You are that seed. The divinity you have been seeking is not outside you waiting to be found. It is inside you waiting to be expressed. If you feel called to continue this sacred unfolding, to keep walking this path of embodiment rather than seeking, then join those who have chosen to live as expressions of divine intelligence. Subscribe and become part of a community that no longer searches for God but lives as God intended. The journey into embodiment never ends. It only deepens. Each day becomes a new opportunity to express the divine more fully, to love more unconditionally, to create more consciously. You are not reaching the end of anything. You are stepping into the beginning of everything you were born to become.